Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show, where we learn about women's health and sexual wellness. Our special guest today is Tracey Pike. And Tracey, it's so great to see you. Can you just give us a little background on yourself, what you do these days? And again, we're going to want to hear about your college days and that type of thing, but please go ahead.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Dr. Joe. I so appreciate being here because, as you well know, I just read your book and I'm a big fan of your work. I am
Thank you.
currently the executive director at the national nonprofit Ascend, and Ascend champions youth. And that's what I think resonated so much with me about reading your book is how much you are a champion for young people to have knowledge and information so they can make informed choices. But Ascend is again a national nonprofit. We are teaching and advocating for young people to have all the healthy information they need to make healthy life choices. So it basically is kind of a primary prevention strategy to train those needs and of information that they lack. Because as you and I were talking before, in other conversations, I didn't have this information when I was young, and I sure could have benefited from more just factual information, biological, scientific information
Mhm.
that do ironically align with my value system as well,
Right.
but it's always nice to have that to support.
Right. No, that's totally the philosophy we took and the goals we took when we wrote the book was just how you described it so well right there is to have that knowledge at those younger ages and to be able to benefit from that and to avoid having to learn it by experience, because there's so much. I'm sure in what you do at Ascend, you see so many hard lessons learned through experience that wouldn't necessarily have had to have been learned that way. So yeah.
Right.
So tell us about a little bit about your college days, if you don't mind. A little bit more specifically, if you don't mind. What was it like for you back in the day? Because again,
Back
mo,
in
mo,
the day.
well, maybe I should refer to myself as back in the day, but because
Oh, you,
you're not that far out of it. But anyway,
I don't apologize for the fact that I'm a 54-year-old woman. I will just put that out there so people don't even have to guess. So I
really,
have a son and a daughter. So I'm privileged to have parented both sexes and see the very stark and vast differences between raising the two. Um, but when I want to back it up a little bit to high school because
sure.
I think a lot of people of my generation we did not have very in-depth conversations about human sexuality or sexual activity modeled for us because of that their generation we did not talk about private things, and so that was a private act not to be talked about, and so that did not do my generation a lot of helpful good in that we haven't had that modeled for us, so that now we don't know how to have that conversation, let alone publicly. Like, I have spent 20 years through a pregnancy resource center out of Indiana educating young people. Which is part of what Ascend does is to educate the educator on professional, I don't
Hmm.
know, learning theories and styles and just
Hmm.
professionalizing the language, being the thought leader and convener on the topic of human sexuality and how it should be taught. So, with that being said, in high school, not having very much foundational information from my parents, I dated a young man for 4 years, and I had a very pivotal conversation with him that happened our freshman year of high school, and it went a little something like this. I said went into high school, and I noticed a lot of couples were in stairwells, making out and having conversations that I was privy to overhearing about sex. And I just thought, in my own brilliance, that I was not ready for that. So I was just going to break up with my boyfriend. That was how I was going to skirt the issue. So I had a conversation with him one evening and basically said, I think we should break up because I'm not hooking up with you. And he said, well, wow, okay, thanks. I didn't really ask you to. But okay. But can I ask you, like, you're never, ever, ever gonna hook up with someone? And I'm like, well, of course, like when I'm married, I mean, I guess, obviously when I'm married, I will. And he's like, so you are you're never going to have sex till you're married. And I really hadn't even thought through like that, because again, we had not had these conversations in my home. I knew things, but just, this is a time of my life where I'm forging my own, my own belief system of what I'm going to believe in. And so, I mean, I had really thought through why or how that logically made sense. But again, I'm a freshman in high school. And so I said, well, yes, that is what I'm going to do. I am not going to have sex until I'm married. And it really was more of an argument than it was a belief system of mine at that time. Mm-hmm. And so he said something that changed my life, and probably is the reason I have a great father. But this conversation, freshman year of high school with a young man, changed my opinion of manhood. This is what he said to me. He said, "That is so cool. Wow, I really hope my wife is doing that for me." Wow. And I hadn't thought about his wife. I was me, So this is the conversation. And he said, well, you know what? Maybe I'll try that too. Maybe I'll try to save sex for marriage. And if you're truly trying to save sex for marriage, and I'm trying to save sex for marriage, and there's a lot of pressure out there for people to hook up, why don't we just keep dating and not have sex? And I'm like, wow, what a concept. Is that what people do that? Like, how do you do that? So we dated off and on. We broke up a few times, but for 4 years in high school, I pretty much predominantly dated the same person, knowing that sex was not going to be a pressure in our relationship. So, that I made some very healthy choices, honestly, maybe by accident. I don't know. But then college. And this is where your book really resonated with me, because I saw myself so much in the college scenarios of, I had been involved in a sport and then was not involved in a college sport. So I was not getting the exercise. I had no sense of boundary setting. I had, for lack of a better word, lucked into a very healthy relationship in high school, but carrying that into college did not really translate to the college culture. Mm-hmm. And then also began to eat more junk food. I didn't have a lot of funds going into college, so I ate poorly, because it's a lot cheaper to eat poorly than healthy. And I really felt like I could have so benefited from knowing the information that you had wrote about, and that's so scientifically and biologically factually backed up. And I just feel like, we don't know this information, and knowledge is power, as you point out in the book, Mm-hmm. But the other thing that I think, that probably went a long way with me is the fact that I was taught discipline and self-control in very simple ways, simplistic ways. And that's one of the things that we teach at Ascend, is to teach educators how to teach youth that they know some basic concepts like this in other areas of their life, and to connect the dots for them so that they can see you are capable of boundary setting, healthy decision making, discipline, and self-control. I'll just use a real simple one. Make your bed. It's not, make your bed. If you get up and make your bed as a discipline, it is it just starts your day that I am in control and I make decisions, and here's what I'm doing. Maybe that's a scientific study. I don't know. But I just think that in college, I started a slippery slope of just dating to try to figure out what this is about, Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be real honest with you. The relationship I found myself in, I was graduating from college and was in a relationship and didn't want to lose it. So I married the guy. And that didn't work out. That did not work out well for me. So then after 7 years and one child, that relationship failed. And it failed plenty because I did not understand men, and mm-hmm. he did not understand me. So also backing up too, I was raised with 2 sisters, no brothers. So not even up close and personal do I know men at all, and how men think. And again, just, prefrontal cortex not existing, right?
Not till at least 30.
Yeah, right. And then not understanding um, I don't know, just that compelling factor of men to want to be risk takers and, non-monogamous without the discipline and self-control. Not that it's not possible, but anyway, that marriage failed and failed very well. And so then I began really then as a 30-year-old trying to figure out relationships and still not knowing much information about relationships and boundary setting. And so I found myself in an unplanned pregnancy at 30 years old.
Oh,
I
wow.
saved my unhealthy decision making for 30 years old.
You're
But
that's very rare, I would say.
yeah, well, I'm a special kind of
Yeah,
not
I can.
smart sometimes.
Well,
But so I had an unplanned pregnancy at 30, and that gave me my son. I don't have any regrets for the outcomes, but our choices do have outcomes. And another focus, I think maybe listeners, maybe just Americans don't really think through is how our choices always do have outcomes. They'd be healthy or they're not healthy. I mean, healthy choices equal healthy outcomes. Unhealthy choices equal unhealthy outcomes. Look at our diet regimen, look at, almost it that translates to all things in life.
mhm.
But in those unhealthy outcomes, I found myself in a second marriage that was very unhealthy because, again, I don't know how to have one. And I didn't understand the differences between men and women, boundary setting. But that unplanned pregnancy really stirred in my heart a passion for young people to know more information
Mm,
that no one told me. So I've spent about 20 years in the public school classroom through a nonprofit organization in Columbus, Indiana called Clarity, which is a pregnancy center, but has the foresight enough to think preventative rather than just intervention.
right.
And so I became the, I guess, speaker in a classroom through their health program. And then we expanded the health program. When I started with Clarity about 20 years ago, we were speaking to hundreds of people at Clarity. And when I left this past year to join Ascend on a national conversation, then we were speaking to about 10,000 students a year through about 92 schools in many counties across South Central Indiana.
Wonderful.
So that grew up, out of kind of a passion for me to reach young people with more holistic, healthy information. I just wanted more for my kids than to just not be pregnant or not get an STD, and I wanted them to be relationally healthy. And I did
Right.
not know how to do that. So I set out to learn it and then teach young people about that. So that's
Well,
how I got to where I am today. So
I gotta
that's a lot.
say,
You're
I gotta s
speechless.
no, no, I'm not. I'm not speechless. I've been thinking, you're the perfect candidate. You're the perfect role model in a lot of ways for what you do today because you've been through the, I don't know, the again going through the trials and tribulations that you want to help the young people to avoid. And when I hear your story, hear your life story, it strikes me that you're exactly right. I mean, if you'd had the knowledge, again, just happens to be what we wrote in the book, but and there's other places to get it, I'm sure. But if you'd had that knowledge or just the knowledge you've imparted at Clarity and now at Ascend, at a younger age, you would have definitely been
Yeah.
able to apply it. You had the discipline, like you said. There's some good parenting there, and but you just didn't have the information about this particular topic, and that's in writing the book. What Sarah and I tried to do was to write it realistically and kind of, I mean, she helped to make it much more entertaining, and then our editor made it much more entertaining than it would have been if I would have if it just been me. But we also knew it needed to be absolutely scientifically backed, because there was going to be a lot of
So
blowback. Yeah, yeah. But
I
anyway,
was so impressed with that.
well,
Yeah.
thank you
Over
again.
200 footnotes. I mean, as an author of curriculum, I really did go look at the footnotes because I think there's a lot of power in the reading the study that's being referenced, so
Yes, well, we that's what we
I
thought
was very
too.
impressed with
Well,
the
thank you. Yeah. And I mean, it really does
Mhm.
really fit with what happened and the unfortunate things that happen in your life. But again, it brought you to a good place. So obviously there was a good, it ended up being a good pathway. There's a lot for you that, but there's a lot of pain along the way. And I got to say, the other inspirational element to the book was that I've been I've been no star as far as the sexual realm either back in my past, and I would have benefited a lot from knowing it as well. So, and it was very empowering to me when I did learn it. So I thought to myself, wow, I gotta start with myself. I gotta make sure that I'm squared away, because the battle never ends. But especially with a guy,
Right.
but now that I understand myself better, and I understand my wife, of course, but then the other women in my life, it's like, okay, well, now I can kind of weave my way through this minefield a lot more effectively than I could have before. So yeah, I
Right.
mean,
Right.
I'm when we wrote the book, I was writing from the perspective of a guy that really got a lot of things wrong as well, along the way, and tried to write it so that it would
Well,
help. Yeah.
I think that helps us resonate with people more, being authentic, first of all. And then second of all, I've done things right and well, and I've done things wrong. And I'm going to tell you, the right way is always the healthier way, and so in taking morality out of it, just there is a benefit to the discipline and self-control of valuing yourself and making decisions that align with that value. And so I just think that the most powerful speakers to young people on topics such as this are those who have made unhealthy choices and said, man, I wish I regret enough that I'm coming back to spend my life to tell you how to not do it if you don't want the same outcome.
Right.
I do tell you, one of the best speakers we have had at Clarity that I was up close and personal to spoke from a place of pain. And I just think so many adults discount themselves because they feel hypocritical, let's say, because they think, well, I've made unhealthy choices. Who am I to teach healthy choices? And I literally had someone ask me that right when I took the job at Clarity to be the director of education, where we taught sexual risk avoidance, teaching young people how to avoid risk. I had someone, and I needed it to happen. Don't get me wrong, I'm not offended by it, but I literally had someone say, who are you to teach that? And I'm like, healthy, learn, educated, informed, passionate about young people not having to repeat that cycle. So I just
Mhm.
took that passion and just poured it into young people because I believe young people deserve the information. Now, what they do with it, I've said that 100 times in the classroom, what you do with this, I can lead you to this information. I cannot apply it for you, but you have to know it. And
Mhm.
it's so, a disservice to young people to withhold the information they need to make all the healthiest choices.
I so agree with everything you're saying. I would a hearty amen to everything you're saying, because again, my own life has been again, I guess it's a display case of that. Although I'm like you, I learned as I went along, but unfortunately I had to learn some things the hard way, that if I would have known all of this to begin with, I would have taken a different pathway. Again, I knowing how males are versus females, though, and kind of the way sex is like a cocaine addiction, a possibility for a cocaine addiction for males, your typical male. And by the way, that guy
Mhm.
the guy your freshman year of high school that said what he said, that's very admirable. The way that whole relationship went, I mean, that's great. That's
It,
what you want a young man to do. But and
it
maybe there
really made me
yeah, and maybe more young men would do that if confronted with that no, sex is not going to happen until till marriage and that type of thing. I mean, I'm guessing that they almost never hear that these days, and that again, that's the reason
well, I think
go ahead, go ahead.
as you and I both know, that as a prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, it is not natural for young people to think so futuristically.
Right.
And so it is our job to literally point out, out of the moment and into the future, get your eyes off of the here and now, because you can't drive a car just looking at the 10 feet in front of you. You have to look ahead. And so I think that's our job as adults, is to point kids, gaze to a future that they are not able on their own usually to think about. So it was very fortunate that I had dated someone who was futuristic enough to think, yeah, in my outcomes, this is what I would want for my life. So it was a perfect storm in a good way
Right.
for me. And it
Right.
made me respect young men. And I just don't think women know how to respect men, because we're so different. And without this information, what what purpose do we have in respecting men when they are so different than women, as far as more monogamously driven and more, I don't know, capable of expressing emotion, and, just the different things that you point out in the book that are so well done. So,
Well, thank you. Yeah, the whole bonding process is really different between the male and the female, and females looking
mhm.
at through the female lens, that they wouldn't understand just wanting to have, rampant sex and with anybody or whatever. And then the male, on the other hand, doesn't understand why the female doesn't want to just, okay, let's go for it, and it's really oil and water, basically, in a lot of ways. But when you don't have any, like you described, when you don't have any really training at all, or any knowledge of it, it's a tough situation, because girls getting out there, they're becoming women, and there's all this pressure around, okay, if you're a woman, then you're going to do this or that, and the guys are, they have their own fair share of pressure, and that does have an effect. But I would say, again, as a book, I tried to point on the book, there's this huge hormonal and natural thing that's going on, that's pushing the behaviors, and not just, we hear in society, especially these days, oh, it's just all social, it's socially constructed. Well, you're kidding yourself, you're fooling yourself, and
That's right.
you're not doing these young people any kind of favor by not including all this information and all these factual facts about themselves that they should understand and know. So I really am glad, Tracey, that you understand so much what the book was about. And it really is heartening to me that somebody in your position that does what you do and has done what you did, at Clarity, that it resonates the way it does, because that's really the highest purpose of that book. This interview is about you, but I gotta tell you that it really, I don't know, I just really am glad that matchup came up, because again, and I did not, when we wrote it, I didn't have any, I didn't think through of, okay, there's people out there that professionally are trying to get across these, concepts, and get this information in all of those right heads it's supposed to be in. So so thank you for getting it, and for it making sense
Mhm.
to you, because that really was the purpose of the book. But getting back to you, so I think we've probably
Thank you.
established.
I
Say.
wanted to say thank you. I just want to say thank you for writing the book. I think it's so well done. And I do love Sarah's comments throughout it. And that was really brilliant of you as a man to bring in that female perspective, so that she could just weigh in on where she's at on that issue as well. So all the data and just the illustrations, it is a really great match, honestly, that it's super interesting. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what we hoped would happen with Sarah. Again, the book would have been very dull with just me writing it. Sarah, and then our editor, Aubrey, between the two of them, it came out just the way you're describing it. It came out very, I think, interesting, and but has all the science with it. And hopefully it's really attuned to not only the college age, but also it's applicable to the younger and really even older. I've interviewed a bunch of my former students that are still single women, that are in their late 20s and even early 30s, and it's still really all applicable to them as well. So, but
oh,
go ahead.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let me, unfortunately, we're coming up close on time, but I want to make sure we get a couple other things in. You've answered pretty much everything, I think, already, but let me see if there's anything that, well, let me ask you this. In everything you've experienced, What have you found most fulfilling in your life so far? And I know you mentioned your children and that type of thing, but what would you say after all this experience you could say to college and high school women that would be of the most fulfilling thing you've discovered?
I think I did allude to it a bit in that, to keep your gaze and focus off of just the moment. I just think right now, even with mental health and emotional health crises in our culture, getting our eyes off of ourselves and fixated on what we are experiencing and at this moment. Not that those aren't real and need to be obviously worked through, but to think to the future and what the outcomes that you desire and how you can align your, this is my I guess advice to young people, is to get the knowledge you need, which knowledge is power and we know that, but
Mm,
knowledge is by itself not powerful, it's application, right?
mhm.
And to try to determine the outcomes and align and position your behaviors toward those outcomes. As far as advice, the most meaningful thing I think I've done, obviously, I would say raising my two children on the face of this earth, a male and a female, that honestly are two. I'm so impressed with who these people are, in spite of my mothering, but very productive, amazing members of society. My son is in the military; he's in the service. I think there's just no greater gift than somebody who would be willing to lay down their life for another. I am a person of faith. I feel it very, very fulfilling in my life to have found something that I am this passionate about and get paid for that. That I've gotten to call that my career. I just can't tell you. I tell young people all the time: figure out something you would do for free and figure out how to get people to pay you to do that, because that is true. That's true happiness, and it's a joy. So I am very humbled that I've gotten to speak into the lives of so many young people. And it's been very important to measure the outcomes of the curriculum that I've been a part of authoring, as far as behavioral change and intent. But you just can't measure the look on someone's face when they get, wow, I'm important. I have value. And getting to disseminate that information is priceless. You can't put a dollar figure on that.
Yeah.
And when I die and they lay me in a coffin, I want to go out going, I did everything I could to impact this generation in a positive way. And I'm working on it. I'm a believer of young people. And one of my biography, or not biography, I guess it is a little bit of a biography, when they want to hear about a speaker that's coming to speak to them. I always say, Tracy thinks she's a teenager trapped in an old woman's body. Yes, I am. I am a teenager trapped in an old woman's body. I get young people. I love young people. And because I think I'm authentic enough to share, what I've done well and what I've not done well with young people, that really resonates. Young people love authenticity. And so I think that's another thing about the book and about, your work and the work of Ascend, is we just want to empower young people for the possibilities of the healthiest future. And they deserve it. It is discrimination to withhold that information from young people. So
To-
I'd say working with young people honestly has been a joy of my life, and producing two great members of our society is my biggest triumph, I think.
Well, that is a great way to finish this interview. And I know you are great at what you do. I mean, just the time we've spent here today and the other times we've talked, you have a special gift, Tracy, and I really am glad you do what you do. It's a major positive in our society to have people like you doing what you're doing. So keep it up, and
Well, thank you.
we will we'll work, be on this and work on this journey together, and work on this initiative, because I feel exactly the same way you do. So thank you so much, and let's stay in touch.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I just want to champion everybody out there to believe in young people. They deserve it.
Totally, totally, and they're the future.
Amen.
All right, take care. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.